Good morning, good morning. This is John Dingfelder. You're listening to WMNF, either on the radio or on your computer, on your phone. And this is down
through a seashell?
Through a seashell, through a whale's belly.
Yeah, there you go. Well done, John. Well done.
John Dingfelder and Jason Marlowe. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, John. How you doing this morning?
Good. This is Down and Dirty, and we are going to get down and dirty today. We've got a great show and some great guests. Let's just jump on into it. Although, Jason, you did have some...
Yeah, just wanted to take a moment of personal privilege. For those who didn't know, State Senator Geraldine Thompson passed away yesterday. She was a very, very dear friend and mentor of me. Meant a lot to me professionally and personally, and just wanted to give a shout out to her and her family, and for her
State Senator from Orlando, Orange County.
Many years of service to the state of Florida and to Orange County. So, big shout out to Imani and Jasmine and her granddaughters who are close friends. Just wonderful, wonderful people, the Thompson family. So
kind of sudden.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sorry about that. On a lighter note, we have some great guests today. We have Tampa City Councilman Bill Carlson. Bill is into his second term on City Council. He has an illustrious career in the business community and has his own company. But he's here in his semi-official capacity today.
Which hat are you wearing today?
I could wear either one, but good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Bill. And we have Linda Salcena, speaking of Tampa City Council. Linda served on Tampa City Council, I believe, 16 years.
20.
20 years, okay. Back starting in the 90s. And took a little time off to have her two wonderful daughters. And then she came back and served another 8 years. And we served together 2 terms. It was wonderful. Good morning, Linda.
Morning.
20 years. You're going after the Charlie Miranda record.
Let me tell you something. Ain't nobody going to break my record.
I started in 87, actually.
My first public works project was the pyramids.
You were lucky. Charlie, welcome.
Happy to be here. Let me tell you, I love the horses.
All right, that's enough. Linda, in all seriousness, you started when Sandy Friedman was mayor, I guess. Or
yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That must have been a good time.
Well, no, because City Council had 6 men who were not very enlightened and me. It was a tough time to be a council member.
But a good mayor to be under.
Well, Sandy was a mixed blessing.
Yeah?
Yeah, she liked neighborhoods. That was good.
Okay. One of your pet projects over the years.
She was not enthused about transit particularly. So.
That's interesting. Well, we will get into all those issues. Those are the issues we're going to talk about today. I titled this program the region, county, and city our failures and our successes. And that's what I'd like to talk about. Linda, I do want to give you a personal shout out. Linda's a native of Tampa. She was born here, raised here on Davis Island. She stood tall and loud, very loud on planning issues, transportation issues, environmental issues, trees, arts, culture, historic preservation, and I'm sure I missed some.
The arts.
Bill, I think you'd agree with me that Linda has been a mentor to both of us. Not that she's any older than either of us, but just professionally, politically, a mentor.
It's hard for me to think of anything that I'm involved in now that Linda did in part inspire. And you know what a community needs to be successful is for people to not be worried about their own political future, their own reputation, anything like that, and just find people in the community that they can train and mentor to do better. And when Linda found me 25 years ago, she never asked me to run for office or anything like that. She just started including me in things. I remember I was telling her a few days ago, I had a meeting with the city staff to finally get the renovation of Tampa Union Station going forward because it has a lot leaks and some other problems with it.
The train station.
We've been trying to get it renovated for 4 years through the CRA. But as I was giving a tour to the staff, I walked into the boardroom and I remembered Linda bringing me as like a cub to a meeting 20 years ago where she was having a meeting about advocacy for trees. And that was my first exposure to advocacy on trees and my first exposure to the Tampa Union Station. But all of that was embedded in the back of my mind. By the way, another day, she gave me a tour of Central Avenue and showed me, and I don't know why you did this. You just one day said, hey, I want to teach you about Central Avenue. And that's what a great mentor should do. We all should reach out to more people. But because of her tour of Central Avenue, then I got excited about the Jackson House, and she and I have worked together trying to save the Jackson House now for years, and we can
Save
talk
some
about that.
semblance of the Jackson House. Yeah.
But Linda also, I think, worked in the city at some point, and Del Acosta, who's another mentor, was in planning in the city, and the insights and experience they have are invaluable for people. If somebody jumps into office without having someone who can show them what's happened and why, and talk to them about the possibility of what could be, they're not going to be as effective.
So, Linda, let's go back to the early 80s when you started your professional career, and you were in planning, I believe, working for the Planning Commission.
Yes, I was a community planner. My first job was translating planning documents, which are unbelievably boring and dull and dry, into the vernacular so regular people could say, oh, this is how this could affect me, and therefore get involved. And I created public meetings, and
Were you working, Planning Commission's kind of divided up into county group and a city group. Were you in the city group?
In those days, it was current and long term. So current, Del was my boss. He was 30 years, he turned 30, and I thought, oh my God, can you trust someone over 30?
He's so old.
But it was a great throw in. They had virtually no women employees at that time. So I think one of the reasons I started as an intern that they hired me is because I was really hardworking. Wow. And I wrote neighborhood plans like the Hyde Park Plan, Davis Islands, West Tampa, and I wrote zoning recommendations for the city and the county. And in those days, the county was a 3 Bobs, Bob Lester, Bob Curry, and Bob Bondi, and 2 women, Fran Davin and Betty Castor. And all the votes were divided along gender lines, with the women voting with the planners and the men voting with the developers.
Ooh.
It was educational,
tough,
yeah.
Tough going there. Speaking of the county commission, and Bill, you mentioned mentors. Linda was definitely one of my mentors. Phyllis Puzansky, rest in peace, was one of my mentors along the same lines. You know, she saw that I was interested in government. I was working for the government at the time in the county attorney's office, and she started appointing me to boards and stuff like that. Sandy Friedman appointed me to the variance board, city variance board, which was my first taste of power.
Oh, yes. So much power. You shall not have a pool. Behold.
Anyway, no, it was actually a good training ground to go to city council, because you sit there and you listen to things on a very retail level of, in terms of this neighbor and this neighbor, and should we allow that pool cage to go up, and what impact does it have on the person next
grand
door?
oak? No, I mean, listen, the Variance Review Board is one of those things that people I don't think know exists, but actually has a pretty enormous impact on their daily life if it happens next to them.
Yeah. But anyway, so that was my upbringing, during that period of time. But let's talk about some of these big issues, successes and failures. Bill Carlson, Linda Salsina, our guest today, and in the big picture, growth management. Growth management back in the 1980s, the state of Florida passed a very progressive Growth Management Act, which I think Pat Frank had something to do with.
The Little Elms Bill and the Big Elms Bill, environmental land management.
Yeah, and those were sort of earth-shattering for Florida, which prior to that had been anything goes without any regulation, state or local. At this point, the state of Florida, somebody up there stepped in and with a wise idea, Growth Management Act, and said local governments need to put together these comp plans, and they're going to have meat and power, meaning to them, right?
Yes, I was a young planner, and they sent me to the Boondocks with the idea that there should be planning, and people stood up with pitchforks saying, "That's communism. You can't tell me what to do."
What was the Boondocks, like Sefner or?
No, like Valrico.
Valrico,
and way South County. And
yes,
way
planning
East
is
County.
Definitely communism.
As is fluoride in the water.
Good to see you, comrade.
How did you survive that, Linda?
I was so young and so idealistic. I just thought, I just need to educate them. I need to explain this more clearly.
And did it work? Well, ironically, those are the same people who came in 20 years later and said, "Oh my God, this development's creeping our way, and you haven't done anything to control it," right?
And should Lithia Pinecrest be widened? I mean, these things tend to show up again. And
This
again.
is why Linda has found a whole generation of neighborhood leaders and others, business leaders, to mentor, because then she doesn't have to fight it all by herself. Then we get in other positions that we can fight it for her.
Delegating.
One thing that underpins all this, though, is that think about something like 80% of the people in Florida didn't grow up in Florida. And Florida's economy has always been based on growth.
I think we have 4 people in the room who were born in Florida.
No.
No,
No.
you weren't, Jason?
Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah, that's why I got a decent public education.
Whoa.
You heard me.
I thought you were raised down south.
No.
All right.
Again, why I have a decent
3 out of
public
He's
4.
getting some time down.
3 out of 4 of us born and raised in Florida. Bill, go ahead.
So think about people think that the economic engine of Florida is tourism, but it's really growth. And if you package all that together, the thing is that the new people coming help fuel the economy to keep everybody else employed. And I've been on the Florida,
Which is problematic, sort of, right?
I've been on the Florida Chamber Foundation board for about 20 years, and the business community in Florida has seen this as a problem for 30 or more years. We've got to diversify our economy, and in Tampa, it's what I call the edifice complex. When an elected official's only goal is to build new buildings,
Cut ribbons.
then it shows that all you care about is growth, and you're not paying attention to the quality of life of the people. And Miami, for better or worse, it's a planning nightmare in many ways, but in terms of the economy, because of its outward face toward Latin America, it's diversified its economy. And you all know I spent 5 years in Singapore. Miami, Panama, and Dubai all copied the Singapore model in being a regional hub. Tampa should have been that regional hub, but it wasn't. You all probably know the story. 1930, you all know the story. 1930, an airline came to Tampa, and this is when Tampa Airport was Drew Field. It was still an Army base.
1930.
And so,
Eastern Airlines. maybe?
So the airline
National.
wanted to build an island off South Tampa and make it an amphibious airport. And they said, we want this to be our gateway to Latin America and the Caribbean. We want to push all of our flights to go nationally, to go through Tampa to Latin America and the Caribbean. And the people in Tampa said, no, we don't want that. That airline was Pan Am. And they reluctantly moved to their second choice, which was Miami.
Wow.
And that now is the American Airlines hub of Latin America. And so
I wonder why. Is there any history on why they turned it down in 1930?
Noise was one of the pieces of feedback that we heard, that the planes would be coming and going. And
Might have been Linda's grandfather.
I had the over-under at 20 minutes before he mentioned Singapore. So I just want to be clear. It came at the 17-minute mark.
Oh, that's all right.
But now with MacDill, you know that we get a lot of comments, I think mostly positive. MacDill right now has fighter jets, and they're really loud. And I live just north of Gandy, and they're flying all the way up
They
there.
seem to
and
be
back.
extra active, I've heard recently.
Yeah,
Very
but that's
concerning.
freedom right there.
Or something.
Freedom flights.
That's freedom flights.
So, growth management, have we accomplished anything over the years? Success
bit.
or failure?
So there are these things in the county called urban growth rings, and you're supposed to create new density where you've already invested in infrastructure because that makes
The
sense.
urban service areas.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Which
but-
we're debating expanding right now.
Right. And it's not as if the county is overflowing with money to suddenly be running water lines and more schools and parks and fire stations out into the hinterlands. The wise thing to do would be to develop where we already have density in a smart way. It's tough because the development pressures in the state are so tremendous. And that's one of the reasons why WMNF is so important, because there are very few sources like Creative Loafing and WMNF that will talk about these issues, and otherwise everything is just go, 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 grow, grow, grow.
Tell us what your shirt says today, Linda.
I need you to say it because
Journalism makes democracy healthy. I think it's signed by the Poynter Institute or Mr. Poynter
Yes.
or whoever
Yeah.
that is.
Well, Bill had a conversation about this on council on Thursday with the CRA, talking about channel side and talking about density and building density where it belongs. Part of the conversations on Thursday with Andy Scaglione, who was a representative for the channel side CAC, was talking about increasing the FAR, allowing density to build up in channel side, similar to what we already have existing in downtown. Talk a little bit about, Bill, why is that so important that we
So
do that?
Linda helped create the plan for Channel District. I think Andy also worked on it, and maybe John and others did. But
I came
originally
later.
Originally, it was supposed to step up from the water, which was a good idea. But along the way, different city councils have provided exceptions. So you have lower level buildings next to like 20-story buildings. The problem now is that across Meridian, SPP, which is Water Street people, are going to be building north where the old flour mill was, and they're going to be going up to the FA limit. When on the eastern side of Meridian, we're still going to be at 4 or 5 stories without going through a lot of hassle at City Council. And places like Hyde Park, other neighborhoods don't want 20-story buildings in the middle of their neighborhoods, which is what the legislature is trying to force on us. And so why not give maximum density in the places that people don't object to it? In Channel District, we can do that, and we can make it by right and also make it part of the CBD, which means staff would approve it. So we don't have to fight about that. And I think if we give release points for developers to build maximum density in dense areas, then we protect our neighborhoods for another 20 or 30 years.
And
All right,
it's
so
also
we're
adding
gonna-
a ton of tax base.
We're going to circle back on that for a second. I just realized David's been waiting to chime in for about 12 minutes.
Very patient. We thank you, David.
David, you're on, and I apologize for the wait.
Hey, no problem.
David's from Tampa. What's up?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Hey, one thing I was curious about, because Linda, I know, knows art, but I was curious about her take on New College possibly taking over the Ringling Museum and the Oslo Theater. And and my second question is,
The old New College might have been okay, but the new New College.
the new
Terrifying. That's my commentary.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I understand. And then the other question is, why don't we have like a regional, transit authority like MARTA and WMATA? Like, why is Tampa so behind the times? And
I mean, didn't we have T-BARTA?
Great questions, David. We will get to those. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a good one. All right. Let's jump back to Channel Side real quick. Linda, you have any comments on it? You were one of the founders, or if not the founder, of the Channel Side concept.
Not only founder, I met with a group of people, including Tom Hall, who came up with the name Channel Side. They were beginning to build the aquarium on 13th Street. I thought, not a snappy name for a big new aquarium. So we changed it to Channel Side Drive, and we named the area the Channel District. It was supposed to be for artists and low rise.
Because previously it was a lot of low, 1-2-story warehouses.
Exactly,
and
a lot of abandoned parking lots. And originally there were a bunch of artists there. There was a theater, there was the Artists Unlimited, there was a bronze poor person and a painter and a dancer. But once those 2 towers were built, the game was over. The people who were artists basically moved to Ybor City, and as long as you're building high, you should build high. I mean, it's a walkable area. Thank God they're planting trees. It's shady. It's thoughtfully designed. And Bill, thank you for taking the initiative on that.
Here's my take. Here's my take on it, Bill. For what it's worth, is we had this discussion previously when I was on council, and I said, I'm all for giving them greater density and greater height and that sort of thing, but get something back in return. Get some amenities that serve the community, whether or not it's bike racks or retail at the bottom level, or other things that make Channel Side even better. And Linda, I love Channel Side. I mean, I think it's very cool. It came out, pretty well. Nothing's perfect. But there are some nice parks in there.
I mean, I think
we tried to get one of the parks named after you. Bill and I did, and I don't think that went anywhere, did it?
Well, that is part of the problem, is lack of green space.
Well,
Andy did mention that that area should have 11% green space. It's currently at 2%.
And I just have to do a shout out to the Port Authority for not placing their globe in the right place. You had Kennedy Boulevard looking at the Port Authority building, and it looks directly at a driveway. And this beautiful globe is like 40 feet further south.
They missed it.
They missed an opportunity. People need to think about design when you're doing large public things.
Can I mention one more thing about this? The big battleground now is going to be the eastern side of Channel Side Drive. And the area I'm talking about with maximum density is on the west side of Channel Side Drive. If anybody knows where the Sugarman
sort of gets disorienting when you get down there, east and west.
So where the Sugarman exploding chicken sculpture is on the to the right, as you're going north toward it, on the right there are cruise terminals, and then on the left there's parking and condos. And so the battleground is to the east. And this is a long story. I'll try to make short. But the port about 6 years ago 7 years ago, did an update to their master plan. A port's business is maritime, and it's essential for us to get access to materials. If we get rid of our port, we won't have a way to get materials in and out anymore. Also, it's the largest economic engine in our area. The cruise industry is vitally important as well, and it's 20% of the revenues of the port. If we didn't have the cruise industry, we would put container terminals there because we only have 3 deep water channels. The problem is that a handful of developers want to develop all that land because it's waterfront, and they say, "Oh, let's get rid of the ugly stuff."
Who
there.
owns it?
The city owns if you think about the aquarium parking lot, that's now owned by the city, and to the east, where the cruise terminals are, that's owned by the port. So my proposal is let's do a compromise. The developers want to develop all of it. The port and the maritime industry want to protect all of it. How about instead of putting the Riverwalk along the waterfront, put it in the middle, like between the aquarium parking lot and the cruise terminal? That way you protect the important strategic maritime industry, but you let developers develop on the western side, all the way up to the bend where the banana docks are, and then up by Adamo. And so there'll be a compromise. You'll still have great views. And if you go to Riverwalks, like I was in Istanbul a couple years ago with my kids, much of their Riverwalk walk goes by a working port. And it's fascinating looking at a working port operating. You see the water at a distance, but you also see the working port. Other parts of the Riverwalk, you can see water.
How do we support that bill? I think that's a splendid idea.
Make sure you talk to the Port Authority board members, and then I'm trying to get a state law change to protect maritime land because it's easy. Again, because the strategy of Florida is growth, and we have what I call the edifice complex. The only strategy we've had for years in Tampa is that we build shiny new buildings. If you get rid of the biggest economic engine in Tampa and you get rid of what's bringing in products and goods to our community, you're going to increase prices and you're going to take away jobs.
Well, plus, you only have a finite amount of public land. And when the government sells off the public land, leases for 100 years off the public land, it's gone. We've got Jerry on the line. Jerry's coming in to talk to us.
Jerry, you are on the air. Sorry about the wait, Jerry.
Thanks. That's okay. So I want to throw a couple of ideas out and then get your feedback, and I can take it off the air. So, guys, I think you're one of the better political shows on WMNF. I think the music is really what's going to save us all in the end. However, I think you guys do a really good job, and I think you're sincere.
Thank you, Jerry.
So you're welcome, and thank you. I remember the park thing that you guys, I heard it on WMNF, and I told everybody. So my idea is, I think we're in a new era, and my idea is maybe once a week, maybe once every 3 weeks, you just field calls, and you have somebody on board, and you start gathering just collective input from whoever wants to say it, like me or like somebody else. Like, what is the top thing on your mind relative to per discussion?
It's not the worst idea we've ever received on the show, to be honest. That's really not a bad idea, sir.
You just start taking stuff down. They can be anonymous, and you just start inventorying it, and you put it into a supercomputer like Buckminster Fuller, like these guys are doing. They're putting it in. It's supercomputer now, man. And I know it. I hope you guys know it. It's supercomputer. They've got the supercomputers. But what do you use the supercomputer for? Fuller said it back in '81. Now, so that's it.
Well, we love the idea of doing more work to incorporate feedback from the community and hear what folks are saying. And thank you so much for calling.
And wait, one more thing.
Quick, buddy, got to be quick.
Nobody's talking about ag.
I mean, listen, we talk about agriculture all the time on the show. We
talk about it now. It's overdue. Where's the food going to come from? Where's the food going to come from?
Very true. Listen, we had Commissioner Freed on here a couple months ago, and we'll continue to talk about agriculture. We did talk about it just the other day with Craig Pittman as well. But thank you so much for calling, Jerry.
All right, a lot of good topics. Actually, this morning I was actually thinking about a show, Jason, down the road. I try and be local, talk about local issues that we feel like we have a little more control over. But I was listening to Congresswoman Castor yesterday talking about some national issues, and I think we're probably going to jump over and do some national issues because they are dramatically happening in Washington and Tallahassee. So anyway, but today We're going to try and stick to some of these local issues. Let's talk about transportation and transit, which is directly connected to growth management. Failures or successes? Linda?
Well, I have to say I'm feeling extremely inspired because I was at Cafe Con Tampa this morning, and Gil Penalosa, is that how you say his name? Who is an advocate for livable cities, was an eloquent speaker, and he talked about the 8 to 80 premise, which is if something works in a city for 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds, it works for everybody. And his number one idea is that we slow local traffic down to 20 miles an hour so we stop killing people, which will allow people to feel safe when they walk, which will...
Or bike.
And he said the only thing we can do our whole lives is walk or bike that keeps us healthy. You don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to have membership. You don't have to go to the golf course. You walk or bike.
So what's the deal? If you slow traffic down to 20 miles an hour, then people will say, boy, this really sucks. I need to get in the bus or have mass transit. Is that the concept, Bill?
Yeah, and here's the thing. There are brilliant people in this community, like Linda, who have been pushing some of these ideas for a long time. The city of Tampa had a whole department full of people who absolutely understood these issues. They're national experts. They spoke all over the country. A year ago, 3/4 of the department left. And now there's kind of haphazard implementation of some of these concepts, and the thought leadership has not been replaced. And I don't want to go to the detail about why. I watched the city council meeting a couple weeks ago, but we need to bring back some of the brilliant...
Is city council doing something about, investigating? City council has the right to subpoena people. Are we doing anything about, investigating why these people left?
We passed a resolution to hire an employment attorney the city council could work with the chief of staff to do an investigation to find out why not just 3/4 of people in mobility, but most of the economic development department, several people from legal department, others left.
Urban planning left.
The interesting thing about it is that clearly there's something wrong in the culture of the city. And
what is it?
To the media,
what is it?
To the media, the mayor on that day, who's a female mayor, first female police chief, said to the media, no comment. But then the next day, to Harbor Island residents, said everything's fine, and the reason why people are leaving is because of city council, which we know is absolutely crazy because out of the 50 or so senior people that left, city council only interfaced with 2 or 3 of them.
Jason, what are you hearing? You always got your ear to the ground.
I mean, listen, I think part of the problem is we have, and I'll say I've had this confirmed by some sources from within and outside the administration, is I think you have an administration that thinks that the only good ideas come from within the circle and that good ideas don't come from without the circle. And so if you're a person who has an idea, you're in senior leadership somewhere within the city staff and you have an innovation or an idea, your idea doesn't count. Your idea is not empowered unless you are from within, a select few group of people.
How small is the circle?
I mean, it sure feels like it's like Marley, Bennett, Jane, maybe 1, 2, 3 other people. I mean, I have heard multiple accounts of folks who have tried to push initiatives within the city that were innovative, trying to do different things, different ways that might be helping people, more than they are now, and they were suppressed.
What are you hearing, Linda? Similar?
I'm not that plugged in these days, but I know that there's money to do things. There's there are ideas, and things aren't happening. And I'll use one specific example. I'm very interested in West Tampa. There's a park at the corner of Howard and Main Street. It's been covered up for over a year. Why hasn't construction begun on what the neighborhood has asked for ages ago, years and years ago?
Which is like a CRA issue, right?
The reason.
No, but it's really about the city staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason, and this gets into politics a little bit, but the reason is, and insiders tell us,
politics.
Is that it's about what's going to be in the mayor's video in 2 years when she leaves. And if the project can't be in the mayor's video, then it's not a priority. So to the caller's question before, how do we fix this? Number one, we need to bring the brilliant people back. And we need to bring them back in the city. We need to create a culture in the city that is conducive to listening to creative, brilliant people and having them work to their best ability. Number two, we need to build build consensus in the community around plans. Number 3, we need to get the money to be able to do things. We've had a whole string of badly run campaigns around transit. It doesn't mean that the public doesn't want transit. It just means that the campaigns have been badly run. And so we need to fix that, and we can go into the details of it.
I mean, listen, here's the thing, right? And I think that I find just so fundamentally frustrating, and shout out to a friend of the show, Commissioner Joshua Wolstel. I fundamentally
sarcastic.
don't understand. Oh, I am. Traffic knows no party, right? Traffic doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Doesn't care if you're rich or you're poor. You're stuck in that traffic on 275 regardless of where you come from or how much money you make. So why can we not find a way to get a consensus on getting people out of their cars, reducing the number of cars on the road in a meaningful way? Because no matter what, we're going to have endless growth, right? Everyone here at this table, everyone outside of this table acknowledges it. The growth is going to continue to come. So how are we going to find a way to put those people on another means?
Bill's fellow city council person, Lynn Hertak, came up with, I thought, a pretty good idea, or maybe working with Bill. She probably, was, to commit $1 million of city money.
1.6.
$1.6 million of city money. Bill, did you vote against it?
No, I voted against it. Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, to fund the number 1 bus to be free for 1 year. And it's an experimental idea. Get people in the bus. It's kind of like the same thing that the DOT did with the trolley, which was free for a number of years. I'm not sure if it still is or not. But then anyway, the idea is to run the number 1 bus for free for a year. Council approved it, I guess, narrowly 4-3. Bill, you can tell us why you voted against it. I thought it sounded like a pretty good idea, and I see people riding it.
Well, during the first thing is that it creates an expectation that the city will be able to continue doing it, and the city doesn't have the money to continue. There's also, it creates an expectation that the city would be able to do this with other bus lines, and the city doesn't have the money to do it. The second thing, and more important thing, is that during the Martinez administration, then Mayor Martinez got the state to change the law so that housing was moved out of the city into the what's now the Housing Authority, and transportation was moved into what's now HART. And with that went the taxing authority. And so HART has up to 3 mills that it can bill, and right now it's only using $500,000. And no one on the HART board, even the Democrats on the HART board, have not made a motion yet to increase that. Right now they get somewhere like $120 million. We'll be slightly off. If they increase it, think about if they could increase it 6 times up to $3 million, what they could accomplish with that. But nobody's even made
Bill,
the motion.
one of the things I respect about you is you do get into the weeds on these kind of issues and look at the bigger picture. But I would say, in regard to Lynn Hertak's bus number 1, I think the city can find the money. Linda, you've been around for a long time. It seems like when you have a mayor who's interested in an issue, they always find the money. The money's always there. They go to the Jim Steffens of the world or whoever's the CFO, and they say find the money, and the money always magically pops up. Jason,
I want to make I'm going to have a hot take. This is coming in scorching hot. Last year, council was, let's say, bully pulpited into allocating $10 million into affordable housing. Further funding affordable housing interests. I would argue if you want to go utilitarian, most good for most amount of people, if you were to take that exact same $10 million, allow the city of Tampa to bond against it, and put that into transportation, you could help way more people than we can with $10 million invested in affordable housing. And we're talking cutting people's costs in significant ways. You don't need to own a second car. That's less car insurance, less gas, less car maintenance. You want to talk about how the city of Tampa could do really good with that $10 million? City of Tampa doesn't have the money. I mean, it's a $1.93 billion budget, but 55% is police and fire?
But it's sort of apples and oranges, too, because on the other hand, people could say, you had the opportunity to do $10 million for affordable housing and you didn't do anything?
But $10 million with affordable housing is like a drop in the bucket. It's like, congratulations, you built 50 homes for 50 people.
You don't use that money to build it. You use that money.
You buy the land.
Or to buy the land or to supplement the private sector and to help the private sector get it done, because the public sector cannot build us out of the crisis.
100%.
Linda, go ahead.
What's crazy about the HART board not taking advantage of its additional taxing power is that those people, for the most part, are a combination of citizens and elected officials. People don't even know who's on the HART board. They could do this, and then we'd have the revenue. And then I love your idea of spending the additional, the housing money toward this. But when you're doing that, you've got to plant a lot of trees, because if you want people, it's so hot here.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
If you want people to walk to a bus, it's got to get cooler when you're going.
One thing real fast, if Hart can go from 120 million to 700 million within their allowed allocation, but they haven't even made a motion to do that. So my point is they need to do that first. But if Hart is not willing to do it, give us our taxing authority back. Let the city of Tampa run. If the city of Tampa is going to fund transit, let us run it too. Right now, that $1.6 million is going to Hart.
When Linda and I were children, the city ran the was in charge of the buses before they created Hart. All right, we've got Leila and Brandon, a regular listener and caller.
Leila, you are on the air.
Good morning.
Okay, you guys, thanks for a good show. And I appreciate all the people that have been involved in the history of Brandon for the last 30 years, like myself, Hillsborough County. Just wanted to give a shout out to, there was a comment earlier about that district that we need to recognize as kind of blighted. I go downtown and see the homeless on Tuesdays, and the area around the port could be beautified. And I thought 10 years ago, the storage things, the containers right by the banana factory, the old abandoned...
The silos.
The silos. I was trying to come up with the word. The silos, I thought 10 years ago with the Lightning having their name across it, and of course they came through with that in other areas, but those silos could be mini shops that would be elevators up and over the port area to observe what's going on. The banana building could be converted into a shopping center, and the area that you guys wanted to put the Lightning next to the pickleball courts now could be converted into good parking, to where we go more with the busing throughout downtown Tampa, but go to smaller buses. The bus station that I feed at, right off of Morgan Street, that's a huge transit center for the buses. The parking lot across the street is huge and very seldom used. I've always said that.
Leila, is there any public transportation, meaningful in the Brandon area?
We need to go to smaller buses, and I've said that for the last 30 years. We need to go to more like, imagine the Amazon blue tank-looking deliveries. We need to go to more transit appropriate, say maybe for 30 to 40 people at the most, but maybe 20 is better. We need to go to a micro size to get people on them, and also to be more efficient and get all these huge buses off the road.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for your call, Leila. Appreciate you.
Can I add one thing? One quick thing about transportation. There used to be a regional planning organization a regional entity that worked on transit, and now it's no longer there, and that's a long story. But years ago, I helped write one of the plans, the plan for 2035. And the problem with any of these plans for transportation is, how are you going to connect the dots? If there's a rail line, then anybody who's not near the rail line says, well, this is not for me. And then if you haphazardly draw lines where the buses will go, people say, well, I don't really trust this. It's still not going to benefit me. So what we need is density around where the transit is going to go. And Linda and Dell gave me an idea a few years ago called neighborhood commercial districts. And that is where you go to four corners in a neighborhood. Imagine every neighborhood had its own downtown area, and iconic buildings on four buildings, maybe four blocks, 4 or 5 stories high. Maybe they could have affordable housing or offices upstairs. And then downstairs, especially places in East Tampa, you could put a coffee shop and co-work space in one of them, and then you could put a grocery store in the other. And the point is that people then could walk to buy eggs instead of driving across town, and that would take trips off the road. The other thing, though, is when they're trying to sell these transit taxes, one of the reasons they fail is one of the concepts is called TOD, transit-oriented development. And the idea is that if you build a station, then you're going to get all the tax revenue from property around it. Well, I've been to a bunch of the cities that have done this, and what they build around it is crap. And sure, it develops revenues, but instead, why are we waiting for the train or the buses to build these transit hubs? Instead, there's a concept that enlightened cities have called transit-ready development. We can build the neighborhood commercial districts, and we can make them ready for transit today, and that everybody will know then these are the gathering spaces that they go to, and when we have money for transit, we'll connect the dots to those neighborhood commercial districts.
As the devil's advocate, Bill, I heard those arguments when I was on council, and sometimes you get a lot of pushback from that immediately adjacent neighborhood that says, I don't want that 4-story building next to my house. Linda, I want to give you a shout out on design. You mentioned the word design earlier. You write about design often. Tell me your thoughts about design, and I want to give you a shout out in regard to Kennedy Boulevard and Channelside both, but especially Kennedy Boulevard, because you worked very, very hard for a number of years to put in the Kennedy Overlay District, which is now slowly coming into fruition.
And in 1987, when I started, it would have cost us $1 million to take all the overhead utilities and put them underground.
No, don't say that.
Damn, I wish we had done that. But it's, the trees are coming, the redevelopment is coming. You got a plan, but you have to.
But also, you encourage getting the parking off of the street, pushing the parking behind the buildings. I know it's not always successful, but I think it's worked quite a bit along Kennedy.
Thank you. I just wish there were a magic wand somewhere convenient.
Well, you're the magic wand.
Well.
And Linda also worked on.
That was actually.
It's Valentine's Day.
That was very cute.
Linda also worked on plans, if I remember correctly, for Fowler and Bush Boulevard. And unfortunately, those were never done. But it's not that there's a lack of ideas. We need leadership to push some of these ideas.
Well, speaking of leadership, if I look at Jacksonville, I look at Miami.
Why? Why would you do that?
Well, because they did have the idea, and I think it was very effective, to consolidate Jacksonville.
Duval County
became one common government. And I don't go up there and I don't know the details, but I do believe that if Hillsborough County / Tampa had become one common government across the entire county, that at least, I think the city's voice is getting washed out and diluted over the years more and more, especially politically. And we've had the conservative county commission.
This is very
that has the money, that has the power, and now has 1 million people versus the city's 400,000 people.
But the city has heart and vision and history, and I'm afraid that would be completely watered
also
down.
Where these people go to work. I mean, here's the thing. There's a weird. I agree with you in the sense that the city's voice has been watered down, and disagree with you on the idea of making if anything, I'd like Tampa to secede and us form our own our own county, the county of Tampa. I'll take town and country. I'll take out to Odessa,
and
I will
future
give
commissioners to
no
be
disrespect to Leela and Brandon, but I will give all of East County into BFE County.
But how about Temple Terrace, your new home, Jason?
So you and
Temple to Crest. I'm still in the city of Tampa, sir.
Jason, it sounds like you and Josh Wassel agree with each other. He's pushing to let the city have its separate taxing authority separate from the county, so that the county can pay for what it needs and the city can pay for what it needs.
The only problem with that is he wants to, in doing that, basically tear Hart asunder. And if you wanted to talk about allowing Tampa to have its own taxing authority while still preserving the integrity of Hart as an organization to provide county transit, now me and Mr. Wastel can have a conversation in which his tea isn't.
All right, we've only got a couple of minutes. You're listening to Down and Dirty. We've got former City Councilwoman Linda Salcina, current City Councilman Bill Carlson, Jason Marlowe, and John Dingfelder. We're discussing successes and failures in local government. Couple more minutes. I'm going to jump topics completely. The environment. Okay, let's talk about the bay, the river. The rivers, the air, trees, habitat protection. I think there are some successes, and I think there's some failures. Linda?
Well, let me, because we're going to run out of time, but we could talk about this for an hour. But years ago, the city created a stormwater plan for South Tampa, and the end of it was a park called McDill 48. And what they were going to do is just dump water down there, have it be a fenced off park. I mean, a fenced-off area where water
Like
would
a
come in, it would be
reservoir, yeah,
ugly.
yeah.
The neighbors around it said, no, we want this to be a park where we can enjoy it, we can walk around it, we can ride bikes. And with a collaboration between Kimmons, the contractor, and the neighborhoods, it is now one of the most beautiful parks in Tampa.
I haven't been down there, but I heard
Which
McDill
one?
48.
it's just below Robinson, down by Robinson High School. Linda,
beautiful.
let's
Go see it.
Yeah, they got to check it out. Linda, your thoughts on the environment, successes and failures?
I'm frustrated that we still allow fertilizer. We haven't come up with a summer ban on fertilizer because there's a river committee of Temple.
Wait, I thought, no, Mariella Smith did that at the county level. Yes, she did. Oh, yes, she did. Mariella Smith did that at the county level.
Yeah, I think it's still there because Home Depot shuts down their fertilizer sales.
Yeah, 100%.
I am thrilled. I didn't know.
Yeah.
When I was there,
This
I was
is-
on a board with the commissioner who didn't allow it through. So good
Yeah,
on Mariella
Smith. Although I will say, I will tell you, I'm almost 100%. There's a bill in the Florida legislature right now to unban fertilizer bans.
That's difficult.
Or no, to ban fertilizer
How
bans.
many
No, I'm
double
dead
negatives
serious.
are there on that?
I am
the
dead
fertilizer
serious.
issue is extremely important, as Linda alluded to protect the bay, to protect the rivers, to keep the nutrients out of the bay, especially in the summer.
When we were talking about toilet to tap, the treated wastewater that goes into the bay, and I don't remember the exact number, but the proportions I'll tell you. The city said, well, the water that's going in the bay, 50 million gallons a day, it has, I think, 300 parts of nitrates per day that go in there. And I said, well, how much are the nitrates at the river, Hillsborough River? And it's 8 million parts per day. And a lot of that is coming all the way from Pasco County. And so all the things that are going into the river are polluting the bay. It's not the treated wastewater, it's the river itself. We need to fix everything that ties into the river.
And I'll say, listen, I remember very distinctly a dear friend, Gonzalo Valdez with the Sierra Club, showed me a study that I'm not sure exactly who conducted the study, but it said, effectively, how much does the economy of Tampa Bay revolve around having a clean bay that people want to look at, want to swim in, want to be next to? It's like 30%. It's like 30% of the economy of the region is in some way, shape, or form linked, hospitality, maritime industries, all those restaurants and hotels that, on the water. 30% of the Tampa Bay's economy is based upon having a bay that people want to enjoy.
All right, Linda, I'm going to talk about some successes. You were an early advocate of green buildings and green rooftops. I think that, subsequently, or maybe even with you, we did an ordinance that the city, when the city builds something, that they would have a LEED certified structure, which they've done. So that that's a little bit of progress.
A little bit, and there are now scrubbers on the TECO plant. Mm-hmm. The biggest problem I see at this moment is not within our jurisdiction. It's that the state is trying to preclude local government from being able to protect ourselves against things that we don't want.
For being able to do anything.
Preempt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't
Preempt
ban
is the word.
sunscreen. You can't ban plastic bags. You can't ban plastic straws. You can't. I mean, they have for the party of home rule have completely neutered any capacity for municipalities to chart their own courses.
All right, the last topic jump we're going to make is quality of life, arts, culture, recreation,
It's
sport,
better.
even sports.
There's more to do here now than there ever has been, and I love it. And I'm concerned about, for example, last year the state legislature, the governor cut all the funding for culture, but local groups are here in Tampa and St. Pete, so creative, theater, visual arts, and big shout out to Bill for taking the downtown Sierra money and trying to direct it toward our arts institutions, which make downtown vibrant. The arts will be one of the heartbeats of the community.
So because the goal in downtown was the edifice complex, we had buildings without a lot of life. And actually, when John was on the board with me, we pushed to move the CRA money out. But then, because we couldn't, we used it on the arts. The arts were defunded under the last administration. We put money back in, and
To the Straws, to the Tampa Theater, to the Tampa Museum of Art.
In most cases,
And those are city-owned buildings,
yeah,
right,
in most
Bill?
cases, through the CRA, and this is money that can't be spent anywhere else, we're paying 25 cents on a dollar for renovations of all these really important cultural assets. They're not just renovating, they're going to expand them, have more free programming open to the public. They're going to engage the public more. We're going to add lots of life to downtown that didn't exist a few years ago.
I think if your community doesn't have an art component, a cultural component, and Linda, again, you started saying this 30-something, 40-something years ago, you've got nothing. You've got a bunch of buildings and a bunch of people, but nothing else.
I mean, listen, I'll add, we have the zoo's going to be expanding to the river. The aquarium is going to be doing an expansion. We have a lot of awesome cultural stuff coming to the city. Like we're continuing to blossom in some really wonderful ways.
And as somebody who does follow sports, I think, we're a good sports community too, and I appreciate that as well. Recreation, I think Parks and Rec does a pretty good job.
They need more money, as always. I would love to see Kylie Garden, which had 800 trees, reestablished as a beautiful place to be downtown. I mean, there are many opportunities for improvement.
Well, that was sort of the original green roof, right?
And yes, exactly, and a very beautiful one, and a very beautiful one.
By the way, Fran
Bill,
Gilpin is going on the next show, and he's going to be talking about a story he just did about the CRA money and how we could better use it. So.
Yeah, that's. I knew Fran was going to be there. Fran's a great reporter, and Mitch Perry and his gang, Ray Roa, they're going to have a very interesting discussion on the Skinny at the next hour about the downtown CRA. Maybe we'll go over there, Bill, and we'll take over the mics and grab the mics.
Party of six.
So, Bill, the elephant in the room, everybody talks about Bill Carlson might want to run for mayor. I will not put you on the spot, but I will ask.
You literally just did that.
No, I won't. I won't. Although if he wants to answer, that's fine. But I will ask you a related question to what we've talked about today, is if you were mayor, okay, if you ran and if you won, what would you do differently? What would, you've been around for 3 or 4 or 5 mayors. What would you do differently? How would you make it better?
First of all, I'd bring in brilliant people, and I'd create a culture in the city where people want to work and they feel enlightened and empowered to push forward their best ideas instead of having ideas come from the top down. Those could develop on their own. The second thing is to diversify the economy. All of our economy and our economic development efforts over the last 20 years or so have been built around the edifice complex, building buildings, and then subsidizing essentially back office jobs to move here. We need to continue to diversify our economy even more. Those are 2 big things. We also need to do planning, and we're right now the city and planning commission are going through updates of the comprehensive plan and the code. But what we need to do really is make it from the ground up. It needs to be neighborhood by neighborhood. Neighborhoods should give input into what they're going to do in the future. You talked about neighborhood commercial districts. If a neighborhood doesn't want it, they don't need it. They don't have to have it.
I think that's an important.
If they know it's coming with transit-ready services, then they might want it more. But they should be asked what they want. And I think every neighborhood has to figure out, where they're going to grow in the future. Because if they don't decide, the state's going to preempt us and make them grow anyway.
Hear, hear.
Linda, looks like we have a minute or 2 to go. Oh, and by the way, next week is Pledge Week. Now, I'm not discouraging you from listening because we are going to have a show. We're not just going to be asking for money. We're going to be running some of the highlights.
Give us your money.
We're going to be running some of the highlights from this last year. And I think those are very interesting. But we do need your help. As Linda's shirt says a minute ago, journalism makes democracy healthy. And if this station, if the lights go out in this station, we've lost a huge amount, not only in the music side, but in regard to public affairs and news that you get from shows like this. Jason.
We entertain and inform. And I mean, listen, I just want to say...
Which side are you on, Jason? Entertain or inform?
Both. I feel terrible we didn't have time for a friend of the show, County Commissioner Joshua Wolstall, to be on our program today. It seems like every single week we find ways to run out of time.
I'm sure that invite is hanging out there. Linda Salcena, you have the last word. Are you optimistic on Hillsborough County, Tampa, the region, Tampa Bay, et cetera?
I'm optimistic for the city, certainly, because people are finding their voice. Neighborhood leaders are speaking out, and there's a sense of energy. The county Not so much. So,
But
it's
we've seen the
important to
county
do things
government
with
go
both.
up and down.
We have.
You know, when I worked for the county government, it was the best county commission ever, in my opinion.
Listen, just wait.
1990, Ed Taranchik, Phyllis Buzansky, Pam Iorio, on and on. It was a good
And the
county
county
commission.
has great employees, and it has some great residents. So, onward to better leadership.
Maybe we'll stay optimistic there, too. Jason,
No, fading us out. Everybody have a wonderful day.
all right. Thanks for listening. Down and Dirty. You're listening to WMNF.